So Bill just came down with COVID, so he can't be here with us today. He was our first speaker. You may know that Bill has been doing measuring of weather conditions, sunlight conditions, rainfall, temperature for probably over 25 years or close to that. He'll probably tell us, and has some good data. And so we asked him to present to us because is there a signature of climate change in some of the data that he has over that time frame? He is also quite a climatologist in his own right, a citizen scientist, so we're sure he's going to have something very interesting to say for us. Okay. We're still trying to get him on the phone here. So the other thing is, you know, Bill's most famous for the climate comment. Back even further. Bill is, how's this? Bill is most famous for his climate comment in the Bruce Peninsula Press. You know, he thinks he has a big successful career before that, but we all know it's climate comment that made Bill Caulfeild-Browne. So how are we doing with getting Bill? Pardon me? Oh dear. Technology. Now, mind you, after 2 years of COVID, I think we all have probably had our fair share of Zoom calls that didn't quite work right. So, welcome to 2022. Pardon? Yeah, Bill has COVID, but he said he was going to call in, and we tried this morning, and it all worked. But first, we have to get him on the line. Anyone got some good Stephen Sharper jokes we can use? Actually, good Stephen Sharper jokes, that's a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it? Okay, we got someone on the line now. Okay, we're getting the presentation up. We have Bill on the line. So Bill will take questions. You're going to have to tell me the question, and I'll repeat it so that Bill can hear it. But at any rate, please welcome Bill Caulfeild-Browne.
Hey, Bill. 1 second.
A little bit like a radio broadcaster talking to a lot of people I can't see. And I'm sorry not to be with you in many ways. This is the first time I've missed a forum since its inception. But I'm glad to be with you in spirit, if not in body. My first slide is just ask the question, is there evidence of climate change in Tobermory? And slide number 2 will tell you a little bit of the methodology I use to establish whether it is or isn't. What I've done is to compare the Environment Canada records, which I have from the 20th century, for most of the 20th century, not all of it, and compare that with my weather station records from the last 26, 27 years. There are some caveats in this. Most climatologists, I think all climatologists, see 30 years as the minimum record to be considered viable for purposes of establishing trends. My station has 26 full years, so I don't quite make the 30, but we're awfully close. And I will say I've actually got 27 years now, but I haven't compiled the 2022 data because the year isn't over. It does, however, support what I'm going to show you in a moment. The other caveat is the location. The Environment Canada records came from a different place from where my weather station is located, but it's very, very close. And in a moment I'll show you a slide that shows that. There are always questions about accuracy of readings. My station is electronic. Instruments can drift, and I make sure to check them every so often with reference thermometers to ensure that they're truly accurate. I also check from time to time against the Environment Canada station at Tobermory Airport. That is not very useful. It's useful for things like barometric pressure and rainfall, which tend to be less localized. But for things like temperature, the airport's in a very different climatic zone. It's a microclimate of its own. It's well back from the lake. It's high up, and so the temperatures would not normally correspond with something on the lakeshore. The next slide, please. This will show you the difference in location. If you go to the left-hand side, you'll see the St. Edmund's Anglican Church, and that's my weather station is very close to that church. The Environment Canada records came from a spot very close to the Innisfree bed and breakfast over on the right-hand side of the slide. The distance between the two is about 600 or 700 meters as the crow flies. It's only 800 meters to walk it. It's probably about 600 to fly it. So they're very, very close. There's a similar height above the water, similar distance from the water. So I'd say as microclimates, they're virtually identical. Next slide, please. Now, this is a very fussy slide, and you don't need to read all of it. The important part is the bottom three lines. The third one from the bottom shows the results from my weather station. That's a total of all the figures above for the years. It's the mean temperature for each month. Just below that, the second from the bottom, the mean temperatures recorded by Environment Canada. Again, month by month. And then the big line, the green line, is the important one. That shows you the difference in temperatures between the last 25, 26 years and the majority of the last century. As you'll see, we've got temperatures that are consistently higher, except for April. April is a break even, but all the other months are higher, and the winter months are distinctly higher. If you prefer to see a graph, look over on the right-hand side, and you can see the I'll call them turquoise, I'm not sure what color that is, green lines are the Environment Canada, the blue lines are my weather station, and consistently they're higher. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that there's an anomaly in September. We go from a 0.4 Celsius increase in August, and we go back to 0.4 in October, but September for some reason is 0.9. I don't know why. It's been that way for many years. I did discuss it with David Phillips when he was here at our forum a few years ago. He said he'd seen that as well. He didn't have the answer either. So I feel I'm in good company of being ignorant. My own theory is it's possibly related to lake temperature. That as we're getting warmer, the lake temperature is staying warmer longer, and maybe that's influencing the September weather. But I really don't know. It'll be a mystery that I hope will be solved eventually. Next slide, please. This probably is pretty hard for you to read. I was expecting to be standing amongst you with a laser pointer to point at the figures, but this is a look at precipitation, again comparing the last 25, 26 years with the 20th century, and you'll see that if you just look at the third line down, that the precipitation is less during the winter months than it used to be, much the same, though slightly more in the summer, and that's subject to a serious caveat. My weather station measures moisture, measures precipitation. If it's snow, it measures the water because it melts the snow as it lands on the station and gives me a reading of the water. So in terms of moisture content, my station's very accurate. On the other hand, in the 20th century, the weather station keeper will be measuring the snow and deciding how wet it was. Usually it's kind of a ratio of 10 to 1, but we all know, anybody who's shoveled snow knows there's light fluffy stuff that's got virtually no moisture, and yet there can be really heavy, sleety, slushy stuff that's loaded with water. So these figures are highly questionable. They do imply that our weathers are getting drier, our winters are getting drier, and that is consonant with comments I've heard from folks who've lived here much longer than I have, that yes, snowfalls used to be much greater, I've even heard from one or two snowplow operators that they don't see as much snow as they used to see. So I think there's some subjective evidence that says this is indeed a trend. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. Just saying in summary, Tobermory is clearly about a degree warmer than it was in the last century, and I think is continuing to warm. This is completely constant with most global circulation models that would show that winter is warming faster than summer. I will add there's subjective data to add to that. We mentioned this at the last forum where we discussed climate change. There are a lot of species, both of animals and flora, that are creeping northward as the climate warms up. We've actually seen Virginia opossum in Bruce Peninsula National Park now, which is wasn't even heard of 10 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. So we are seeing a creeping of species further north. And the Carolinian forest zone on the edge of Lake Erie seems to be spreading as well, though the evidence is less firm for that. So that's my conclusion. We are seeing evidence of climate change in Tobermory, and not as much as if we were situated 10 degrees further north. Excuse me, but there it is. I'll be glad to answer any questions if I can hear them.
Thanks very much, Bill. We'll get the lights on here, and are there any questions from the audience? Yes. Okay, so Bill, I don't know whether you heard that, but basically the question is around wind. Do you monitor wind, and have you noticed any telltale signatures of change in the wind speeds that you're monitoring?
Well, Glenn, you know I monitor wind because I helped you way back when you were establishing windmills and measuring wind in Tobermory. The answer is yes, I do. I haven't noticed any particular trends. Wind is, well, it can come and go very quickly. One of the reasons I would be uncertain about any conclusions is that my weather station is very exposed to the west, to the north, and somewhat to the east, but very unexposed to the south. There's a lot of trees, and I love trees. I'm not prepared to take the trees down to get better wind readings. But the answer is no, I haven't noticed anything. We don't seem to get the very high winds that we used to a few years ago, but I think we get them more often. But that's a purely subjective comment.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for your very thorough presentation, Bill. We greatly appreciate it. I think it's a great launch for our conference here, and please get well soon.
Thank you very much, and do enjoy the rest of the day. I wish I were there.